nice to be here. Thank you all for being here. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm going to talk a little bit about folklore here in the Southwest today. Um, Folklore, what the heck is that? I don't blame you for asking, but in the meantime, I'm going to tell you who I am. Uh, First, let me just say I have never held a job I've been qualified for in my life. I studied the geology of the moon at the University of Arizona and then worked in a record store for a million years. It was a great job. It was the height of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, um, pre-AIDS, and it was actually a great place to meet all the cultures in the community because everybody listens to records. And when you're a student at the university, you're on campus and you really don't know anything about the community. And so it was a revelation for me to work that job. From there, let's see. I went to work for various newspapers along the way. There was a place called Tucson's Newsreel, and I got some beautiful babe to grab me and have her picture taken with me. I think she's famous or something now, but I worked for many years as a performance artist and composer. On the right is a publicity photo from my first opera, which was called West. And on the left, believe it or not, that's me opening the Club Congress back in 1983 or 84 as Blind Lemon Pledge with my partner, the lovely Miss Pearl Drops. And there was no stage at that point. We performed on the bar. People were spilling things at my feet. I had all this electronics on top of it, and I truly thought I was going to be electrocuted or dragged off and murdered. The Little Dinks was another of my performance art groups. We decided that we would become the worst band that ever lived. And we actually succeeded. We sent a tape to South by Southwest one year and were called a couple weeks later after a fist fight erupted during the judging as to whether we were actually a musical group or not. I wear that with pride. In 1992, we ran for President of the United States and were successfully defeated. And that was the year that Bill Clinton was running on health care. And so in our platform, it said, if the Little Dinks are elected president, we will have great health care. You may not, but we most definitely will. All right, so let's see. My second opera I'm still working on. It's called Jim Jones Superstar. It actually uses the recorded voices of Jim and his followers as rhythmic and melodic hooks. It's a very twisted piece. Figure on that about 3 years from now. I also do some artistic photographic work. I have a series called Bewilderness, which is people doing bewildering things in the middle of the wilderness. Another series from that is the Doorways to the Infinite series. Michelle Boss is a friend of mine who is very interested in those transitions from this world to the next. And so we have spent probably about 7 years working on creating images for what will eventually become a book on her part. Other things, I ran for Pope briefly. Again, was successfully defeated. I found out that in order to be Pope, you have to be Catholic and male. And I figured, well, I was Catholic once, that's close enough. And still male as far as I know. So the Tucson Citizen was dumb enough to hire me in 1987. Again, no qualifications for this whatsoever. I'm a lunar geologist. I am not a music critic. But they hired me, so I did it. And that was the greatest job of my life. I worked there for 24 years. And they sent me out to, in theory, my job was to cover the symphony, the opera, the Chamber Music Society. But I decided, the slogan of the paper was "The Citizen is Tucson." So I thought, we need to cover the music of Tucson, which was the folk festival and many other things, mariachis and Norteno, and some of the other folklore things that we'll be talking about today. Davis Elementary, right down the street here, just a couple of blocks from here. That is where the magic is happening in this town. Bilingual school, kids that come out of these programs, you can tell them on the street. You know, you can see a kid from Davis and just know how they look you in the eye. I had a little girl walked in there one time. I was filming for the Poetry Center. And I walk into one of the portables, and she's there with one of the assistants that they have. She walks up to me, fourth grader, says to me, "Hello, my name is Mari. If you need anything, I'm here to help you." I said, "How long have you been a mariachi?" And she said, "How did you know?" like I wouldn't know. Incredible kid. By the way, she's a she's a junior at Pueblo High School with Mariachi Atzlan at this point, and has grown into an astonishing musician and just a lovely girl. Okay, so getting back to that first question, what is folklore? The traditional beliefs, customs, and stories of a community passed through the generations by word of mouth, or a body of popular myth and beliefs related to a particular place, activity, or group of people, like Hollywood folklore. We have so much Tucson folklore, we could just, be here for a day, 2 days, a week. But let's take a look at some of the stuff we have. Obviously, the first place most people really encounter the folklore world of Tucson is Tucson Meet Yourself. And that's Jim Griffith there on the left. He just passed a few months ago. Lovely, lovely man. When he created this, when I was in college, and just backtracking, my first day in Tucson, I met Jim Griffith. I'd had a truly shitty day, and he was playing where the Harville building is now. It was a parking lot then. He was playing banjo, and he was just tearing it up. And we became good friends. And a year or two later, he started Tucson Meet Yourself. And what an incredible thing that was. So in the early days, it was what we call tradition bearers. And in folklore, what that is people who, as in the first definition, learned, from someone directly, word of mouth kind of thing. Somebody's teaching you a song. A parent is teaching their child. Somebody is teaching you these things directly who is part of that community. And for years, it was nothing but tradition bearers, which was extraordinary. And they were dying off left and right. Now it's more revivalist kind of things. The Balalaika Orchestra, for example, would be something of people who are not from that culture picking it up. We have a gamelan orchestra here in Tucson. Same type of thing. Really, the mariachi in Tucson is more revivalist. Very, very few families that are passing, father to son or father to child, that sort of thing. But Tucson Meet Yourself is kind of the place where you discover we are anything but a monolithic community. That there is someone here from every part of the world. I had a teacher in college, Jiba Ganguly, who was an optical petrology teacher. That's where you take thin sections of rock, and by looking through polarized microscopes, you could see you could deduce what the temperature and pressure and water components were when this rock formed. Very, very difficult thing. One day I ran into Jiba at a local restaurant teaching his kid tabla patterns on the table at the restaurant. And it was a side of him that I never imagined. And, this is the thing that you discover about Tucson. There are so many people that have such cultural gifts. Another guy I met early on was an old Armenian guy. Aram Galician was his name, and he played the oud, which is the lute in Western, well, we call it a lute. Actually, that's a bastardization. It means laoud. But incredible player. I recorded him, he was probably about 80 at that point. And in the middle of the session, his family had moved from Armenia to avoid the genocide. And they moved to Harlem, 2 doors from Billie Holiday. And he used to jam with Billie Holiday when he was a kid. And, in the middle of the session, he's playing this incredibly ornate Armenian music, and he puts the oud down and he says, "I need to give the Sultan of Turkey a drink." And he went and took a leak. Some local traditions. How many of you have ever seen an Apache violin? How many of you have ever heard of an Apache violin? Well, this is Chesley Gustion Wilson. I don't know if Chesley is still alive or not, I'm sorry to say. But Chesley was one of the last playing it. Geronimo made these violins. Originally, they were made with human hair for strings. They're a cording instrument. And, of course, in the Apache way of living, everybody is communally in a big building together. And when you're courting your sweetheart, you're in there with everybody else, so you need a quiet instrument. And it's really lovely. And his dad was a medicine man in the Apache tribe. And again, somebody that I was able to record over the years and so on. Really amazing tradition. And again, I met him through Tucson Meet Yourself. I would never have had any idea. But this is the great thing about living in Tucson. Norteno is a tradition of the border states of northern Mexico. And, back when the border was kind of a fluid situation, many Czechs and Poles and other Eastern Europeans settled in southern Texas, what's now the northern states of Mexico. And they brought with them their accordions, and the locals loved them. And so, being the way they are, they borrowed what was interesting to them, melded it to other things that they use. So in Norteno, we see a bajo sexto, which is a rhythm instrument that has 12 strings. It's a beautiful instrument. Of course, an accordion player. Now we have usually electric bass and drums. Now, the interesting thing about Norteno is it has a cousin locally, which is Huayla music. And we just heard mention at the folk festival. Huayla is Norteno music, Tohono O'odham style. And the difference is, in Huayla, you don't sing. They'll be playing the same songs. The interesting thing also about Huayla is these guys, when you're doing a Huayla dance, it takes place between sundown and sunup. So they have to have, a repertoire that they can play from sundown until sunup. And B, you have to have dancers who dance from sundown to sunup. This is hard stuff. Now, what they do to make it easier on themselves is they very rarely know what the title of any of the songs is. So if you ask them, what's the name of that tune? Chances are really excellent they couldn't tell you. But it's probably something that you've heard all the time. I remember hearing Never on a Sunday seemed to be a very popular tune with the Huayla musicians. It's so crazy and so great. But what they've done is the same type of thing. Here, this is Gertie and the T.O. Boys, and I misspelled it here on this, and I apologize. It's Gertie, not Jerry. It's sad when cousins marry, but here I am. And they have substituted an electric guitar for the bajo sexto, but it has exactly the same chank, chank, chank rhythm going on. Fantastic thing. And this is the great thing about living in the Southwest is all the people who have been here all this time. And the Tohono O'odham, they were here when the Spanish arrived. They are the descendants of the Hohokam. And Tucson is thought to be the oldest continuously inhabited place in North America. So, and one other thing about this, the Tohono O'odham, what we call the Tohono O'odham, is actually several different groups. And the ones that live at the San Javier mission, for example, they consider themselves Savaibapree O'odham. The word O'odham means people, Tohono means desert, Savaibapree means river. And they were the people who lived along the Santa Cruz River when it flowed 24/7. And the Tohono O'odham were people like over by Gila Bend and Yuma and so on. So these are things that, when I first moved here, they were Papago, Spanish word that means bean eater. And they took themselves back and became the global Tohono O'odham tribe, and now they're taking it back a little bit more. Very fascinating thing. One of these days we got to get some of the folks from the O'odham tribe to talk about just the amazing things that go on with them. Quilters. How different can we get? Okay, so when the Arizona Centennial took place in 2011, I guess it was, we became a state on Valentine's Day of 1911. And the Historical Society decided the way to celebrate it would be to have 100 quilts from quilters around the state. And I got to film that, photograph it, etc. And what I discovered was, I'm expecting to walk in and see this kind of thing. And that was part of the show. But then there were these ornate works of art. But it's the same thing. It's the same folklore tradition of a parent or an aunt or someone that one teaching you the stitching techniques, teaching you all those techniques, teaching you how to find fabric that has the right texture and the right color and everything to do what you want to do, to conceive a piece. This particular quilt was done by a team of about 15 women. And they did it in chunks. Each one had their own different things. And basically everything great about the state of Arizona is in this quilt. It's an extraordinary quilt. I was so impressed. I walked into it thinking I was too cool for school. And boy, did I get schooled in a hurry. And I'm used to that at this point. It's become a way of life. So let's talk about a few other traditions here in the Southwest. How many people know what an escaramuza is? Okay. I wish I had a photo, a better photo anyway. You can kind of see one right here. It's a female equestrian tradition, Mexican equestrian tradition of trick riders who, in big chara skirts, sit side saddle and do everything a man does, just 90 degrees away. Extraordinary horse people. And that brings up, the whole horse culture of the southwestern United States, which we think of things like rodeo and, all of the things, a lariat, this, that, and the other thing. Most people don't realize those are Spanish traditions. That, every piece of kit that a cowboy has, everything that a cowboy does, the term buckaroo, is vaquero, mispronounced. So, you know, that whole thing, the traditions of saddle making are so amazing. Rope making, you know, you don't think of how do you make rope? Well, people do it by hand, and it's an extraordinary thing. Dancing horse traditions. Have any of you ever seen that? Where, oh yeah, there we go. Where a horseman, you know, they'll put on music, and this horse just, you know, starts dancing to the music. It backs up, you know, whatever this guy wants it to do, and he's controlling it all with just his knees. It's extraordinary stuff. Again, another, you know, family member to family member kind of tradition. I mentioned the rope making and that sort of thing. How about, have any of you been to Yaqui Easter ceremonies and you've seen the deer dancers? Yeah, that is just an unbelievable thing. They put on a headdress that is made with a real deer's head. And you know, if you go walking up Tumamoc Hill and see the deer on the side of the road doing this kind of stuff, that's the deer dance. Phenomenal. We live in such a rich area. Ukrainian Easter eggs. How many of you have been at Tucson Meet Yourself and seen just eggs that are made into cathedrals of, you know, just really beautiful, beautiful things? Another folklore kind of tradition. Mexican paper flowers. I'm sure all of you have seen that in piñatas and things of that nature. Another of these traditions that is just handed down. You learn how to do it when you're a little kid. And, you know, some of the people who make these things, you just can't believe it's not something that grew out of the ground. Cascarones. I meant to bring a cascaron in. They are, again, an egg thing. There's like a cone that you put the egg on top of. You drill a hole in it, you empty everything out, and then you fill it with confetti and decorate the outside and smack somebody on the head with it, and the confetti all comes out and makes a big mess. So I meant to bring one today, but I didn't, and I regret that. Regional foods. So many different types of Mexican food along the border. So many different types of every imaginable food. Tucson is really extraordinary. Now, here is something, wrapping up. Okay, here's something you'll never hear again. Let's go out for Irish food. You've heard it, that will never happen to you again. Storytelling traditions, God almighty, you know as well as I do, a great storyteller is worth their weight in gold, and, you know, it's the same thing. You learn from someone else, it goes on and on and on, and you embellish it along the way, and it changes. What else have we got? What I do as a filmmaker is just talk to people and get their stories and hear about their traditions. And I'm working on a film called The Mariachi Miracle, which is about how the city of Tucson has been transformed by youth mariachi and folklorico groups. And there will be a sneak preview of the film here April 30th. So I hope you'll come. The film will not be done at that point. We still have some filming that needs to be done at the mariachi conference this year. But you'll see a good chunk of it. And what I'm trying to do with this is tell the story only through the people who lived it, no narration. Just have them tell the story. I've interviewed 300 people, and it took me 10 years to work on this thing. It's the best story I'll ever get to tell, and it's the best story you'll ever hear. So please come. We don't have time to go through the rest of it, and I'm terribly sorry about that. What have we learned from this? You should never have me as a guest speaker. Folklore is all around us in many forms, and it's too early for this. Thank you very much. And There we go.